Hello everyone, this is Attack the Backlog, the podcast where I, Marc, tries to make a dent in their backlog one game at a time. This episode is all about Mini Ninjas, a simple little action-adventure game where you play as a ninja who must save the world from an evil warlord who is turning animals into evil samurai warriors because said warlord played way too much Sonic the Hedgehog, because the robots in Sonic were powered by animals, and like in Sonic, when you defeat an enemy, they turn back into their cute little selves. It all makes sense the less you think about it. Mini Ninjas originally came out for Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Wii, and PC on September 8th, 2009. There was also a Nintendo DS version, but I imagine that one was pretty different, or maybe it's not, or maybe it is. All I know for sure is that I'm far too lazy to look it up, but not too lazy to go off talking about how I'm too lazy to look it up. Scratch that, apparently it is pretty different, focusing more so on adventure than action. Anyway, so Mini Ninjas is one of those games that's hard to talk about. Hard because it doesn't do anything special, but does what it does well enough and just works. It's the kind of game that doesn't make much of an impression, good or bad, but when you're playing it, you'll likely have a decent enough time for the most part. There are a few annoying sections, but more often than not, it's an easy, enjoyable ride, even on the hardest difficulty. And on the topic of easy riding, Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper would hate this game, but you know who wouldn't hate this game? They're kids. If you don't have kids, drive by a school and stare at the kids inside. They'd like it too. Disclaimer, I can't be held accountable for any potential arrest due to staring at said kids. Actually, maybe I can. So, that whole staring at kids thing, don't do that. But to steer this ship back on topic, Mini Ninjas is a great game for kids thanks to simple design, minimal challenge, lots of charm, and delightful art that all comes together to make a game that's rather inviting and overall pleasant without being particularly memorable, which is another reason it's great for kids because, kids forget shit all the time. Or is it that they latch onto something and then play it / watch it, etc. over and 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 over again as their parents slowly lose their minds? I don't know because I don't have kids and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. Speaking of time, when I returned to Mini Ninjas after being away for over a decade, that's a lot of time. I didn't know what to expect. I remembered really liking the game, or at least being surprised by its competence, and that's pretty much how I still feel today. At no point did I ever think, wow, this is amazing, but I constantly thought, hey, this isn't too shabby. And while not too shabby isn't too shabby when it comes to playing games, it sure sucks when it comes to talking about them. Let's get rid of one thing immediately. The story of Mini Ninjas is barely there, and what is there isn't all that interesting, so there's little reason to talk about it. You get a few cutscenes here and there and the occasional NPC to talk to, but that's pretty much it. And if there is more than that, it's so forgettable that I literally don't remember it a day after beating the game. All you really need to know is that it's very kid-friendly, and that's that. Then there's the combat, which makes up a majority of the game. Combat itself is pretty simple and heavy on button mashing, but there is a bit of depth if you want, and you can mix things up if you don't want to just hack and slash your way through the hundreds, maybe thousands of enemies you'll not kill during your playthrough. And by not kill, I mean when you kill someone, like I mentioned earlier, a puff of smoke appears and said enemy turns back into their original animal self. Speaking of animals, you can possess animals for a handful of purposes, including combat, but I'll get to that later. In addition to hacking and slashing with your sword, or with one of the other weapons your ninja buddies use, who you can play as once you find and save them in the world, you can also cast spells which you'll find over the course of your playthrough, most of which are optional, like the ability to shoot out a fireball, the ability to send out a tornado, and the ability to bring forth a meteor shower, amongst others. While these spells are nice, I never use them because the mana pool and your stamina pool are the same thing. So when you use spells, most of them, your max mana / stamina pool will decrease. On the other hand, when you use stamina, say for running, it recharges over time. I hate this system, and it actively made me never want to use spells that depleted my energy. Enemies often drop blue orbs which replenish your energy, as well as XP orbs and red orbs for something I'll get to very shortly, but even so, I never wanted to be without full stamina, so unless I needed to use a spell, like when fighting against skeletons who could only be defeated by sunlight, I never used a single one. In addition to spells, you also have a special attack which consumes 1 red orb and you can hold up to 3 at a time. These range from locking onto a number of weaker enemies and one-shotting all of them in succession to shooting an explosive arrow for massive damage, even if they're not a giant enemy crab. These special attacks are very useful and come in handy when dealing with enemies who put up a good defense, like spearmen who are hard to attack head-on thanks to their ranged weapons, and often enemies killed by a special attack will drop a red orb. Not always, but more often than not, at least in my experience. So the game encourages their use. You also have a handful of throwable weapons like cherry bombs and shurikens, all of which I rarely use because I'm the kind of gamer who hoards such items in case I'll need them later, and if you're like me, you know that later never comes. But while there is a bit of depth to the combat, like I said earlier, I spent most of my time hacking and slashing my way through the game as the main ninja hero. Stealth is an option too, but since enemy encounters were never challenging, again, even on the hardest difficulty, I didn't bother trying to be sneaky. I know that makes me a terrible ninja, but I'm 100% okay with that. And that's the combat. There's more depth there than you might expect, but you'll probably end up staying in the shallow end because the shallow end works and the shallow end is safe. Also, according to many ninjas, ninjas are slow ass swimmers, so that's another reason to stay in the shallow end. And jokes aside, just in case someone brings this up, yes, I know you can use your hat as a boat to move through water quickly, but mentioning that would have defeated the purpose of my joke, which I just did to myself right now. You have bested me this time, dear watcher or listener, but next time, you'll probably win again. Now, remember when I said you could possess animals? Well, you can possess animals. One of your spells allows you to possess any animal in the world, from cute little bunnies to cute chubby bears. I mean, ferocious, fearsome bears that may not come from Chicago. What is this voice I'm doing? And you can use different animals in different ways. Smaller animals are good when you want to be stealthy, and bigger animals are great when you want to be aggressive. And in addition to all that, your senses are heightened as well. Think of it as an animal detective vision, allowing you to see where collectibles and plants are, plants being used for crafting different potions, and even cooler, once you fully level up your character, you can even possess weaker samurai warriors, which is super satisfying and a great way of keeping your actual ninja self from losing health, because animals and samurai warriors have their own health independent of yours when possessed. So it's a good idea to possess them whenever you can, and knowing the possession power would be used often, said power doesn't lower your max stamina / mana pool, so there's no reason not to use it as much as you want. And that's pretty much it. There are a few annoying sections, like one where you're sledding down a mountain with an avalanche behind you, and one where you're climbing a living castle that keeps shaking as you climb it. Annoying because the screen shakes too, but overall, Mini Ninjas was a pleasant experience, and I'm happy I finally went back to it after having not played it for over 10 years. If you look at the time between achievements from when I first played it to when I restarted it in 2020, it goes from 1/20/2010 to 2/22/2020. That is crazy, and I love it. Mini Ninjas is a good game that still looks great today thanks to its stylized, painterly visuals, and I always got a kick out of hearing enemies scream, "Ninja, ninja!" It may not have been anything special, but it was pleasant while it lasted, and sometimes, especially if you're Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon, that's exactly what you need. Just a little pleasant fill. Anyway, once again, I am your host, Marc. Y'all can find me on Twitter and pretty much everywhere at PXSausage. This site is, of course, pixelatedsausage.com, where you can find this podcast and other podcasts about games, anime, and all that jazz, all of which are available on podcast services across the globe. If you'd like to check out the video version of the show, if you're not already doing so, go over to youtube.com/pixelatedsausage and watch it there. If you'd like to check out the art I make, you can go over to pxsart.com, and if you see something you like, click the link and it'll take you to where you can purchase a print of the piece you fancy. And if you fancy the site in general and anything that we do, please go over to patreon.com/pxs and support us that way. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and if you do check out Mini Ninjas yourself, I hope you enjoy it as well. And hopefully, if, Microsoft gets back to adding games with backward compatibility, maybe it'll join the ranks of that and you'll be able to play it on your Xbox One or your Xbox Series X or your whatever. Anywho, once again, thank you for watching or listening. Hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Was finally broken. At that very moment, all across the land, his remaining samurai armies were released from the twisted spell. Thanks to the ninja hero and his friends, the animals could finally return to the forest and live in peace. The ninja master, looking down from the mountain where his ninjas once lived and trained, could see that the wrath of the gods had finally been quenched. The storms on the distant horizon, which had threatened all the land, began to move away, and it appeared to him that the balance of nature had been restored.